Hello, my crime crew. My name is LayNova, and you're watching and listening to True Crime and Vibe, where I give you true crime on your time while you vibe. And to my newcomers, hello, welcome to the crew. And if you like true crime, don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe this video. Now let's get into the case. On a cold Christmas Eve night, a family looking forward to gifts, dinner, laughter, family time, and more on Christmas morning wasn't greeted to a wonderful Christmas like any other family. They were woken up to the worst day of their lives. Today, we are going to be talking about the SOODER family and their horrible Christmas. SOODER family was a big, tight-knit family of 12 with both parents in the household, Jenny Cipriani and Giorgio SOODER. This is about the family whose lives turned upside down. Jenny was born March 2, 1903 in Triola province of Foggia in southern Italy. She was the child of Giuseppe Cipriani and Martha Cipriani. She also had 4 siblings. Jenny seemed to have a pretty good life in Italy. Once her and her family immigrated to the U.S. when she was 3, Jenny's father owned a business in Smithers, West Virginia named The Music Box. As Jenny got older, she worked with her father at their family store. George SOODER was born with the name Giorgio SOODER. George was born in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895. George immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 13 with an older brother who went back to their homeland after both boys were cleared for customs in Ellis Island. George was a very strong-minded and an opinionated individual. He didn't care to tell how he felt about anything and everything. As George got older, he never really spoke on why he left Italy. Eventually, George found work as he got older on the railroads, carrying water and other supplies to workers. After a few years, George started working as a trucker driver in Smithersville, West Virginia. George eventually started his own trucking company, initially hauling dirt to construction sites and later coal mine in the region. George and Jenny met one day when George walked into Jenny's father's store, The Music Box, and met Jenny. In 1922, the couple eventually got married and settled outside Fayetteville. They purchased a 2-story farmhouse 2 miles north of town. Between 1923 and 1945, they had a total of 10 children that went by the names from the oldest of John, 22, Joe, 21, Marianne, 19, George Jr., 16, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, Betty, 5, and the youngest, Sylvia, and she was 2. George's business prospered and they became the most respected middle-class families around. In 1944, the second to oldest son, Joe, left to serve in World War II. The following year, Mussolini, an Italian dictator, was deposed and executed, and George, like I said previously, he was very strong opinionated and wasn't too fond of the dictator and had some criticism about him, and that left a lot of people angry. In October of 1945, George visited a life insurance salesman. After being rebuffed, the man warned George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would be destroyed, adding, "This is all due to your dirty remarks towards Mussolini." But George didn't really take the threat as seriously until an unidentified man looking for work came to his home and asked to look at his fuse boxes and warned George his fuse boxes would catch fire one day. With the man saying that, George felt that was odd due to getting new wiring for a stove he just had installed. The weeks before Christmas, the eldest sons had noticed a strange car sitting along the main highway through town, with occupants in the car watching the kids come home from school, but that would be the last time the SOODER children would walk home from school together. December 24th, 1945, the day was fairly normal for the SOODER family, but the night was a little off track for them. That night, the oldest daughter, Marianne, was working at the dime store in downtown Fayetteville. She wanted to surprise her younger sisters with gifts, Martha, Jenny, and Betty. The youngest girls asked their mom if they could stay up to wait for their sister and the gifts. Jenny gave the okay long as the 2 boys oldest boys, Maurice 14 and Louis 9, stayed up with them. The two boys had chores before bed, so they had to stay up a little later to put the cows in and feed the chickens. George and the two eldest boys, John that was 22 and George Jr. who were 16, were already fast asleep from working. Jenny eventually went to bed, taking baby Sylvia with her, telling the kids about the chores and heading to bed. At 12:30 a.m., the phone rang and Jenny wondered who could be calling at that time of night. So Jenny went downstairs to answer the phone, and an unfamiliar woman was on the other end, asking for a man Jenny was unfamiliar with. Jenny heard laughing and music in the background. Jenny told the woman she had the wrong number, and the woman gave a weird laugh and Jenny hung up the phone and went back to bed. Around 1 a.m., Jenny was woken up by something hitting the roof of the house with a loud bang and rolling noise. But after not hearing anything else for a while, Jenny proceeded to go back to sleep. About a half an hour later, Jenny was woken up again by a smell of smoke. Once Jenny got up to check to see where the smoke was coming from, and she noticed that the fire was in George's home office, the fire was around the telephone line and fuse box. Jenny immediately woken up George and the older sons, frantically yelling to the other children to come downstairs. There was no answer. The fire had already reached the stairway, so there was no way to reach them. So the remaining SOODER family had no choice but to try to escape the fire. Jenny, George, and their 4 children escaped. Sylvia, Marion, and George Jr. and John all made it out safely. After the family was able to escape to find aid and rescue, it was very complicated. The phone lines were down at their home and at their neighbor's home, where Marion ran to call the Fayetteville Fire Department but couldn't get through. A driver on the nearby road also noticed the flames and called the department, but there was no answer to an operator. Someone was able to connect to the fire department from the middle of town. George attempted to climb up the outside of the wall barefoot and broke open a window, cutting his arm in the process. George and his sons intended to use the ladder that's usually on the side of the house to get to the attic to try to save the children, but the ladder wasn't in its usual spot against the house. There also was a water barrel that could have been used to extinguish the fire, but it was frozen solid. George had another solution to pull his work trucks up to the house, but the trucks wouldn't start, which confused George because both trucks had been working the previous day. Upset and frustrated, the 6 SOODERs who escaped the home had no choice but to watch the house go up in flames and burn down and collapse. After 45 minutes, they assumed the other children perished in the blaze. The fire department didn't respond to the fire till the next morning. Unfortunately, the fire department was low on manpower because of the war. The firefighters had to contact each other individually, but most of them didn't respond till the next morning. Once the following morning came, Chief F.J. Morris said the next day was still slowed due to him not being able to drive, and he had to wait for someone to drive him to the SOODER's residence. Once the officials arrived, one of Jenny's brothers were one of the firefighters, but he really couldn't do much but look through the ashes that was left in the basement. By 10 a.m., Chief Morris told the SOODERs that they had not found any bones, as might have been expected if the children had been in the house as it burned. I just want to talk about that for a moment. Due to the chief stating to them that the kids' bones might have burned in the fire due to the fire, I feel like that was complete bullshit. Just because of the simple fact of the temperature of bones burning in a fire, it has to be at least 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or at the least, I'm going to say not even, that's 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit isn't even the least. The least is 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. So honestly, I really feel like he just told them anything. Morris allegedly found bone fragments and an internal organ, but chose not to tell the family. Honestly, I just really feel as if the chief Dan was a complete asshole. He didn't ask, he didn't even try to, not even ask, he didn't even try to at least tell them about the organ or about the bones that he found in the house. Like, why not tell the family what you found? Or did you really find it there? Morris believed the 5 children that wasn't accounted for had died in the fire, also suggesting the fire was so hot it burned their bones to complete ash, stating that you feel as if that the fire burnt these children and perished them, literally took their bones and complete flesh, and literally nothing was left behind, and telling the family that the kids just basically burned, like literally burned in hell, is just entirely insane. This is part 1 of the SOODER family and their tragic Christmas. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this true crime and vibe story. And if you like true crime, like, share, and subscribe, because this section of my channel is the one for you. I do want to thank you guys for watching part 1. And if you like part 1, stay tuned for part 2. I'm out of y'all. Bye.